My rich fiancé, Ethan Lawson, met a college student during a business trip, just a part-time girl trying to make ends meet. After he came home, he told me, his fifth-generation heiress fiancé, that he wanted to break off the engagement. He said he wanted to marry that sweet and obedient college girl instead, Lily Green. His entire family was stunned, and his mother, Mrs. Lawson, was furious. She even threatened to have Lily sold to a human trafficking ring in northern Myanmar. She kept insisting it was all for my own good and demanded that Lily be flown out using my private jet. But I didn't send Lily to northern Myanmar. I sent her somewhere else. After that, Ethan and I went ahead with our wedding. Backed by my family, the Morgans, he quickly became a business tycoon. And the first target he went after was my family. The Morgan family collapsed. My father jumped to his death. Anyone in the family who resisted or wasn't useful enough to him was either driven insane or institutionalized. I was dragged by the hair by Ethan like I was nothing, thrown onto the beds of strange men, unwanted bachelors, discarded like trash. After the humiliation, he sent me to a black site to be used for human experiments. Ethan hated me for not sending Lily to Myanmar. He was determined to make my life a living hell. In the end, I died in that black site, miserably and alone. In his eyes, there was only hatred. His bloodshot gaze burned into me. For every bit of suffering Lily endured, you'll pay tenfold. Then I opened my eyes and realized I had been reborn. I was back to the very day when Mrs. Lawson was threatening to send Lily to northern Myanmar. "Auntie will make sure everything's handled," she said with pride, just as before. "Like you said, the best way to make someone disappear is to send them to Myanmar." "Auntie, I never said that," I interrupted sharply. "Saving a life is better than building a 7-tiered pagoda. I definitely never said those words." Mrs. Lawson's face fell. "Chloe, I'm doing this for you. A girl like Lily can't stay. You're the real future daughter-in-law of the Lawson family." For me, that's a joke. The fall of the Morgan family was still fresh in my mind, painfully vivid. Back then, I really believed Mrs. Lawson was thinking of my best interests. I thought that by marrying Ethan, I would grow old with him in happiness. Until Ethan dragged me from my bed by the hair and threw me into the arms of filthy strangers. No matter how I screamed and begged from the depths of my soul, he only gave me a cruel, twisted smile. Why did Ethan Lawson do this to me? He used my family's connections to claw his way into the upper echelons of elite society. The day his company went public was the same day the Morgan family fell apart. He drove every dissenter in our family into madness, sent others to rot in prison for life. I had knelt before him, begging him not to push my father to the brink. He looked at me with disgust and spat in my face, calling me a whore, saying I had slept around and deserved it all. Even in death, I never understood why Ethan hated me that much. When I was barely clinging to life, I saw him standing before me, cold as ever. Behind him, my father's body was dumped from a rooftop like trash, his corpse lying crumpled in front of me. The force of the fall split his skull and ruptured his liver. It wasn't horror I felt, just utter misery. I hated myself for trusting the wrong person, for dragging the Morgan family into ruin. My father, the man who loved me most, who poured his heart into helping Ethan build his empire, ended up as nothing more than a corpse discarded at my feet. Wasn't the Morgan family supposed to be one of the last century-old aristocratic clans? Supposedly unshakable? What a joke. We shattered like glass. My dad, my beloved dad, as I lay there, my arms frozen like ice blocks, no longer able to feel, even that physical pain didn't compare to the agony of watching my father treated like that in death. Ethan Lawson, why? Why did you do this to me? Even if I turned into a vengeful ghost, I swore I would never let you go. I lost my mind. Grinding my teeth, screaming with hatred, tearing myself apart with rage, demanded answers, sobbing, broken. But Ethan just looked at me with cold disdain, lip curling into a mocking smile. "So many whys," he said. "Everything I built just to destroy you and your family. I wanted you to lose everything, piece by piece. This is the price you pay for trying to send Lily to Myanmar. You made that choice, now suffer for it." So that's all our love had been. Just one part of his revenge plan. What a joke. I actually thought he cared. All the support the Morgans gave the Lawsons over the years, all of it had gone to the dogs. In the end, I became the executioner of my own bloodline. I looked at the man who had sacrificed my family's blood just to glorify his so-called pure love, Lily, and forced out a crazed, icy smile. You destroyed me, but you'll never know where Lily ended up. Ethan laughed like it was the funniest thing he'd ever heard. You think I'd believe that? Sending her to Myanmar was your idea. It was your private jet, don't forget that. I was right there, on the second-floor stairs, when it all happened. I looked at him with exhausted, scornful eyes. That expression, Ethan hated it more than anything. He stared at me, eyes blazing. You should have died. All of you Morgans should have died. You thought your filthy money gave you the right to do whatever you pleased. Here. Let me show you something. With a twisted smile, Ethan pulled up a video. In it, he and a group of men were digging up my mother's grave. Then they dumped her ashes straight into a trash can. He made sure not a single member of the Morgan family would ever rest in peace again. Not even in death was I allowed peace. With the last bit of strength I had, I forced the word out between bloodied lips. Monster. My eyes, red as blood, stared straight at Ethan. For a moment, it was like a final flare of life before death. I wanted to stand and fight him, but my hands and legs had long since been shattered. A cold, bitter smile crossed my face. Actually, I hid Lily. I saw the shock hit Ethan's face. You want to know where she'll end up in the next life? I taunted. His expression changed instantly. He rushed toward me, desperate to know where Lily Green was. In that exact moment, I coughed up a mouthful of blood right onto his face, and then, clinging to the last shred of pain in my body, I died. Chloe, what's wrong with you? Mrs. Lawson's voice called out when I didn't respond. She looked concerned, asking gently. I came back to myself and looked at the woman in front of me, graceful and dignified on the outside. But I knew what she was truly after. All the kindness she ever showed me, all the flattery and attention, was just to help her son climb into the world of true aristocracy, our world. The Lawson family had only recently risen in status. They wanted to skip decades of hardship, using a girl like me as their stepping stone. Compared to a fifth-generation legacy family like the Morgans, they weren't in the same league. Ethan marrying me was like a phoenix trying to wed a princess of the heavens. And marrying a phoenix man? It was always doomed. So full of schemes and calculation, Mrs. Lawson was still rambling, repeating how everything she did was for my own good. That's when it hit me. This wasn't a dream. I had truly been reborn. I had come back to the day Ethan was planning to break off the engagement and leave with Lily. This time, I didn't follow Mrs. Lawson's vicious suggestion. I didn't destroy a girl's life in the name of love. I merely sent Lily away, to a peaceful little town in Yunnan. And I didn't feel a shred of guilt about it. After all, Ethan and I weren't married yet. Back then, I had already convinced my father to back Ethan with full support, handing him his favorite real estate projects with no reservations. Even though we weren't married, I had still given him everything. But this time, I hadn't married Ethan. The Morgan family hadn't gone bankrupt. There was still time to change everything. I looked at Mrs. Lawson's smooth-talking face, suppressing the surge of emotions rising within me. I took a moment to breathe, then spoke calmly. Mrs. Lawson, Ethan and I are not married. Since he doesn't love me anymore, I won't force a man who doesn't love me to stay. Let Ethan be with Miss Green. She stared at me, eyes wide. She never expected I would let go so easily. After all, I had once loved Ethan with everything I had, fiercely possessive and unwilling to let anyone else near him. But now, I just let go. Chloe, don't be ridiculous, she said, her expression darkening. She knew that if I let go, the Lawson family would lose their only chance at rising to the top. She subtly glanced toward the staircase, then continued with her manipulative coaxing, or rather, her veiled attempt at control. Chloe, that girl has no power, no background. She's just a nobody, a college student. How can she ever compare to you? You're a high society heiress. With one word from you, she'll disappear from Ethan's life forever. Her words made me laugh, bitterly. Mrs. Lawson, we live in a modern society governed by law. If there's no love left, letting go is the only way. The only one who gets hurt from clinging on too tightly is yourself. Mrs. Lawson opened her mouth again, ready to say more, but I cut her off. Besides, Ethan doesn't love me anymore. If I marry him now, he'll only grow to hate me. Why not let them be together? Let them have their happy ending. Her face darkened several shades. Chloe, marriage is not a game. I tilted my head and responded innocently. Exactly. Marriage isn't a game. If I marry a man who doesn't love me, I must be out of my mind. Chloe Morgan, why can't you understand? She snapped. I could tell Mrs. Lawson was truly angry now. She had tried everything to persuade me and none of it worked. She was even angrier than when she failed to stop her son from eloping. She knew the Lawson family needed the Morgans to reach the top. Through me, she could clear away every obstacle in the way of her family's climb, including her son's marriage. But in the end, it was still my fault. I was the one forcing Ethan to marry me. I was the one he ended up hating. And yet, she got to walk away with the reputation of being a noble, loving mother and the future matriarch of a prestigious household. What a clever plan. She'd practically thrown her perfect abacus in my face. Auntie, a man like that is filthy, I said coldly. He's not worth it. With that, I turned to leave the Lawsons' villa. But Mrs. Lawson grabbed my arm. She was on the edge of a breakdown, staring at me like I'd just destroyed her world. No, Chloe. Ethan can only marry you. You can't leave. You can't leave. Mrs. Lawson's reaction made it clear she wanted to keep me under house arrest. Just then, Ethan came down the stairs and stepped between us, pulling his mother away from me. Mom. Chloe already said she wants to call off the engagement. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. With Mrs. Lawson no longer holding me back, I was finally free. I had just turned to go when she lunged forward again, trying to block my exit. She didn't want me walking out through the doors of the Lawson home. But then Ethan, love-drunk and irrational, lost it. Seeing that his mother still wouldn't let me go, he grabbed a kitchen knife and held it to his own throat. Mom, just let Chloe go. Let me be with Lily, he shouted. Mrs. Lawson, furious and disappointed beyond belief, collapsed to the floor like a madwoman, sobbing hysterically. Our family is cursed. Cursed. How could I have raised a son like you? Freed from their madness, I walked quickly out of the Lawson villa. Even though a light drizzle soaked my hair and clothes, I couldn't suppress the smile tugging at the corners of my lips. When Mrs. Lawson was young, she'd had too many abortions while starting a business with her husband, Mr. Lawson, and could no longer bear children. But as Mr. Lawson got older and more successful, he began cheating, fathering sons with different women. To protect her status in the family, Mrs. Lawson arranged for a young female relative to have a child for Mr. Lawson, a son she then raised as her own. From a young age, Mrs. Lawson introduced Ethan to elite circles. He was able to mix with the upper class because of me. Because I played with him, the children of other legacy families accepted him too. That's how she latched on to the Morgans, determined to cling to our family's influence. Because of that, my parents offered financial support during the Lawsons' business crisis in our previous life. But Ethan never once blamed Mrs. Lawson. He pushed all the blame onto me and wiped out the Morgan family. Once the Lawsons had secured their place among the aristocracy, Mrs. Lawson pranced around in high society circles as a celebrated matriarch, living a happy and harmonious life with her family. But in this life, I will live for myself and for the Morgans. Lawson family, you'd better watch yourselves. If Ethan loves his little college sweetheart so much, then fine, go love her. No matter how Mrs. Lawson tries to manipulate me, I feel nothing now. Before, I might have tolerated her because she was an elder. But now? My face showed exactly what I felt. When my father heard I had broken off the engagement, he waited outside the house for me. The moment he saw me return, he pulled me into a hug and comforted me. As long as it's your decision, Chloe, we'll support it. Hearing his voice, I couldn't hold back anymore. Tears streamed down my face as I broke into loud, sobbing cries. Dad's eyes were full of pain and heartache as he held me tighter. My poor Chloe, as long as you're home, everything will be okay. I'll make sure you get the justice you deserve. Dad, I was foolish before. I didn't see clearly. I trusted the wrong person. From now on, I'll cut all ties with the Lawsons. You can't help them anymore, I said, looking up at him pitifully, making my position clear. All right, he nodded. We'll do whatever you say. Honestly, we don't need to cooperate with the Lawsons anyway. There are plenty of companies out there, just like them. As we walked into the house together, my stepmother came out to greet us. When she saw the state I was in, her throat caught like she'd swallowed something painful. I heard you called off the engagement. I made all your favorite dishes, she said awkwardly. Go shower first, or you'll catch a cold. Dinner will be ready when you're done. Her awkward concern made my eyes brim with tears again. In our past life, when the Morgan family was falling apart, she could have taken the money and run. But instead, she gathered all the cash and valuables from the villa, hiding whatever she could. She went to the dump where Ethan had thrown away my mother's ashes, and, with her own hands, picked up the ashes bit by bit, placing them back into the urn. She used the money to buy a peaceful cemetery plot for my parents, a place surrounded by mountains and flowing water. She even hired a lawyer to fight for the Morgans. But she was going up against the Lawsons, who were at the peak of their power. There was no way to win. When that failed, she knelt at the courthouse gates with a blood letter petition, begging someone to help the Morgans. In the end, she was killed in a staged car accident by one of Mrs. Lawson's hired thugs. No one even came to collect her body. In that lifetime, I never treated her kindly. Every time we met, we argued. Mrs. Lawson always fed me lies about how my stepmother hated me, and I believed her. Thankfully, this time, everything can still be undone. I stepped forward and gave my stepmother a big hug. Mom, it was all my fault before. I was too selfish. The moment she heard me call her mom, she broke down in joyful tears and held me tightly. Oh, my sweet Chloe, you've been through so much. Tomorrow, let's go shopping, just the two of us. We'll relax and spoil ourselves. Thank you, Mom. We looked at each other and smiled before hugging again, even tighter this time. My dad had been watching us closely. From the expression on my face, he sensed something deeper was going on. After dinner, the three of us sat down together in the study to talk. Dad, Mom, please, you have to believe what I'm about to tell you, I said, standing before them. You must stop all business cooperation with the Lawson family. They want to swallow everything the Morgans have. They're trying to bankrupt us and steal all of our assets. Hearing this, my father and stepmother exchanged a glance. They were both running the company now. Chloe, how do you know this? My dad asked, looking at me with concern. I looked into the kind, warm eyes of my father and, thinking of the tragedy from our past life, decided to share the truth, but in a way they could accept. Dad, Mom, I overheard something when I was at the Lawsons, I began. Mr. and Mrs. I. Lawson may seem gentle and kind, but behind that facade, they're ruthless and full of ambition. They're manipulative, power-hungry, and secretly plotting to steal everything from the Morgans. And Ethan, he's the worst of all. He's disloyal, emotionally unstable, and selfish beyond belief. He's betrayed me already and still has the nerve to want more from us. A family like theirs is not worthy of marrying into ours. That's why I broke off the engagement. After hearing everything I said, my stepmother came over and gently patted my head. Our Chloe's grown up. I've said it before, the Lawsons are unreliable. If it weren't for you liking that boy, we never would have dealt with them. But now that you don't, we're done with them. Only then did I realize my parents had never really liked the Lawsons. Everything they gave the Lawsons, all the support and resources, they only did it because of me. It hit me hard that in our past life, the Morgan family had fallen and been devoured by the Lawsons, all because of me. That sour feeling spread through my chest, and I dropped to my knees, tears welling up. Dad, Mom, it was all my fault. I've been foolish, judging people by appearances. I was blind. From now on, I'll never be that reckless again. I'll fight for our family. I'll make sure the Morgans rise again. Chloe, get up, my stepmother said as she helped me to my feet. Then came a party. In front of a crowd of high society elites, Ethan Lawson suddenly knelt before his parents and mine. Dad, Mom, Mr. and Mrs. Morgan, please, in front of everyone here today, I'm begging you, let me be with Lily. Chloe and I have no love left between us. Everything was my fault. Please, Mr. Morgan, I beg you to let us go. His words caused an uproar across the ballroom. A son of a century-old elite family, abandoning a prestigious heiress just to chase after a college girl with no background? What was Ethan even thinking? Mr. and Mrs. Lawson were mortified. They never thought their son would humiliate them like this in public. The entire Lawson family name was dragged through the mud. You ungrateful brat, what nonsense are you spouting? Mr. Lawson roared, his face turning ashen with rage. The only reason they were even invited to this event was because of their ties to the Morgans. Their business had only started to turn around thanks to our support. Before today, the engagement annulment had only been a private matter between the Lawsons and Morgans. But now, thanks to Ethan's public outburst, every elite family in the city knew. Who would want to work with them now? Mr. and Mrs. Lawson, so desperate to claw their way into the upper class, were practically livid. They probably wanted to slap the ungrateful fool right then and there. "Dad, Mom, this is a new era," Ethan said stubbornly. "We're free to love who we want. Chloe and I never had real feelings for each other. Breaking up is only natural. My heart now belongs only to Lily." The more Ethan spoke, the more the Lawsons lost face. My father, who had previously agreed to dissolve the engagement quietly, now looked completely furious. The way Ethan had just humiliated his daughter, right in front of everyone, was unacceptable. "Young man," my dad said, his voice cold and sharp, "since the day you met my daughter, has the Morgan family ever treated your family unfairly? Has Chloe ever done anything but help you? If you want to break off the engagement, fine, then let's make it official right now. From this day forward, the Morgans and the Lawsons have nothing to do with each other." He said it for my sake, to protect my dignity in front of everyone. "All the engagement gifts, our family will return them one by one tomorrow," my father said coldly. "Thank you, Mr. Lawson, for granting them the freedom to love." Ethan stood up slowly and walked over to where Lily Green had been quietly standing in a corner. The two of them exchanged a smile, full of secret affection. I just stood there, watching everything with cold indifference. Who was the one who, the first time we met, claimed it felt like we'd known each other forever? Who flattered me constantly, and said he'd marry no one but me? And now he says he's only ever seen me as a sister? I sneered at Ethan. He thought that just because he had negotiated a few international deals, he could kick me to the curb? If it weren't for the Morgan family paving the way, he never would have even gotten a meeting with those business partners. They only agreed to work with him out of respect for the Morgans. Lily really was just a naive college student, the kind of pure that families like ours don't breed. She stood there like some helpless little girl, tears glimmering in her eyes. How could anyone not feel sorry for her? Ethan moved to stand protectively in front of Lily, then looked toward me with sharp warning in his eyes. "Breaking off the engagement was my idea. If you dare to go after Lily, don't blame me for what happens next." I let out a soft, mocking laugh. "You think you're even worth my time?" It was Mr. Lawson who couldn't take it anymore. He roared, voice hoarse with anger. "Ethan, shut your mouth. You are not my son, not anymore." They had just dragged the Morgan family's face through the dirt in front of everyone. What future could the Lawsons possibly have after this? Hearing his father scold him so harshly in public, Ethan looked embarrassed in front of the girl he liked. "Dad, the last time I was in France, Lily saved me. We're in love. Mr. Morgan has already agreed to let us be together. I hope you'll understand." People at the banquet started whispering behind their hands. One of Ethan's older male cousins let out a dry laugh. "If Ethan doesn't want to inherit the family business, he should step aside already." "Sure, Miss Green helped you out. What, by sleeping with you?" Lily flinched and held tightly to Ethan's hand, clearly hurt and scared. "Don't be afraid, Lily," Ethan murmured, wrapping her gently in his arms. "You saved my life. You were my first. That means I owe you. I need to take responsibility for you." Then he turned to face me directly. "Chloe, I never touched you. That means I don't owe you anything. Since you've already shown you understand, let's make the breakup official. Right here. Right now." Lily peeked out of his arms, glancing at me anxiously. I simply smiled and replied, "We already ended the engagement the day I left your house. There was no need for this dramatic performance." "I just wanted to give Lily a sense of security," Ethan said, turning to her with a tender look. "See, Chloe really is serious about breaking up." Lily and Ethan exchanged a glance, and she lowered her head shyly. Mrs. Lawson couldn't take it anymore. She slammed her wineglass down with a crash, hurling the red-filled goblet straight at Lily. "You little tramp, seducing my son like that!" Lily shrieked, but Ethan stepped in front of her and caught the flying glass midair. It slipped from his hand and shattered on the floor behind him. Still, he turned back to Lily with a soft voice, gently reassuring her. "It's okay, Lily. I'm here. And even now, Mrs. Lawson still tried to save face. She turned to me and said, "Chloe, Auntie will stand up for you. You are, and will always be, the rightful daughter-in-law of the Lawson family." I let out a cold chuckle. "Don't waste your breath, Auntie. We've said everything that needs to be said today. From now on, the Morgans and the Lawsons have no ties to each other." By now, everyone in the room understood. The Morgans would not be marrying into the Lawsons after all. And naturally, with that, any future business cooperation between the two families would vanish. People whispered among themselves, baffled. All of this, over one night with a college girl overseas, and Ethan Lawson broke off a prestigious engagement for that? Honestly, Lily could have just been kept on the side. Throw a little money her way, and she would have been content. Everyone in the financial world is trying to climb the ladder, and Ethan just threw away someone like Chloe Morgan, the precious daughter of a 5-generation dynasty? Without the Morgans backing them, the Lawsons were going to have a hard time climbing any higher. "Mom, I know you're angry right now," Ethan said, still trying to sound reasonable. "But in the future, I can treat Chloe like a little sister." I simply smiled politely, grateful that I hadn't married someone as foolish as Ethan Lawson. A complete idiot, nothing more than a dumb mutt. Mr. Lawson was so embarrassed he couldn't bear to stay at the banquet any longer, and left in silence. Just as Ethan let his guard down, Mrs. Lawson lunged toward Lily Green and clawed at her face with both hands. Lily shrieked, and by the time Ethan managed to pull his mother off her, Lily's face was already swollen. "Mom, that was way out of line," Ethan shouted. He wanted to say more, but Lily tugged on his sleeve and whispered softly, "Ethan, don't blame Auntie. I brought this on myself. I ruined your engagement." She bit her lip, eyes full of guilt, and Ethan looked like his heart was breaking. "Lily, none of this is your fault. Did Ethan really intend to marry this woman?" Mrs. Lawson stared at the two of them clinging to each other with absolute disgust in her eyes. To her, they were nothing but a disgraceful pair of low-born lovers. "Mom," Ethan said stubbornly, "I will marry Lily Green. No one else." With disappointment clouding her face, Mrs. Lawson turned and walked away. "Fine, this is your choice. Just don't regret it." Ethan, however, mistook her words as approval of his relationship. He looked at Lily and without hesitation grabbed the back of her head and kissed her forcefully right there in front of everyone. What he didn't realize was that the expressions of the onlookers had already changed. Without the support of the Morgan family, no one had any reason to humor Ethan anymore. They were all quietly disgusted by his little public stunt. When he looked over at me, he wore a smug smile, as if he'd won something. I simply curled my lips into a faint, cool smile of my own. Let's see how long that smile lasts. Ethan thought Mrs. Lawson had no biological children, and that without him, she'd be powerless. That's why he felt free to disgrace the Lawson family in front of all those people, stepping on their pride without a second thought. He believed no matter what he did, he would still be the heir. He had those 3 foreign investment projects in hand, and figured once his parents cooled off, everything would go back to normal. The Lawsons weren't a century-old elite family like the Morgans, but with our help, they'd grown significantly in recent years. Mr. Lawson had fathered plenty of illegitimate children, all decently educated. Any one of them could take over. Being an heir? It wasn't exclusive. One of Ethan's cousins glanced at the couple still clinging to each other and sighed, "Some people just don't know how lucky they are." I smiled faintly. A bastard is still a bastard, and there are plenty of them. One heir's as good as another. That cousin paused, then suddenly nodded like something had clicked. "Miss Morgan's right, we shareholders only care about who's capable." With that, he turned and left the banquet abruptly. The crowd began to disperse. I got into my favorite luxury car, a sleek Bugatti, and headed home in a wonderful mood. Mission accomplished. No need for my parents to worry. Ethan had turned the banquet into a circus, and the only ones who truly lost face were the Lawsons. They were the ones who had wronged us, not the other way around. "I'm proud of you, Chloe. You've really grown up," my dad said, clearly relieved. After what happened tonight, both my dad and stepmother had lost all faith in the Lawsons. They'd never do business with them again. Seems what I said that day had worked. Not long after, I heard that Mr. Lawson's illegitimate children had started visiting the old Lawson estate. It didn't matter to them which one became the heir, as long as they could bring the family fortune back to life. If the Lawsons wanted to survive, their heir had to marry into another powerful family. Without that, they'd be finished. Unbeknownst to Ethan, the Lawsons had already begun looking for a new successor. Meanwhile, he was still basking in the joy of finally being with Lily, thinking all his foreign education and projects made him irreplaceable. How naive! Now that I was officially no longer engaged to Ethan, it was time to start planning for my own future. I was the only daughter of the Morgan family. In the past, I thought I could marry someone capable and hand the Morgan legacy over to him, living a carefree life myself. But now I knew, aside from my parents, I could only rely on myself. It was time to start from scratch, to learn business and build my own foundation. The next day, while my parents went to the Lawsons to return the engagement gifts, I began preparing to study abroad. I suddenly remembered how Ethan had once offended our neighbor, the one next door who always mocked him at every banquet. He called Ethan a phoenix man and kept saying those types never end well. Looking back now, he was right. So I picked up a gift and went over to his house to apologize. I was told he was out at a friend's bar. When I arrived, they were in the middle of celebrating. When I walked in, everyone turned and looked at me in surprise. Well, what brings the elegant Miss Morgan to a place full of idle slackers like us? Said the one who always spoke first, my neighbor, Mason Fox. Among all the heirs of elite families, he was the most striking. Almost unnaturally so, like some otherworldly beauty. The Fox and Morgan families were both long-standing houses, and our villas happened to be next to each other. Not welcome? I asked as I walked over and casually poured myself a drink. Miss Morgan, how could we not welcome you? Mason smirked. He always had that lazy, roguish attitude, but he was the designated heir of the Fox family, and now ran the family company with impressive skill. Did our dear Chloe come here to drink because she's in a bad mood after calling off the engagement with the Lawsons? Asked Shane Lynn, Mason's childhood friend, and someone I'd also known for years. Ethan? He's not even worth mentioning, I said, lifting my glass and downing the drink in one go. I stood and looked directly at Mason, just as he looked at me. Chloe, what are you doing? He asked, raising his hands defensively as if preparing to be hit. He looked genuinely nervous, like he thought I was going to attack him. Mason, you were right before, I said solemnly. Ethan really is a phoenix man who should never be trusted. I was wrong to defend him when he hit you. My sudden apology shocked him. Are you serious? I nodded. Twice. Mason broke into a genuine smile but quickly schooled his face back into something cooler. You have no idea how much it hurt to see you make that mistake. Ethan was never a good man, but I'm glad you finally came around. That's growth. Honestly, I had expected him to mock me, but instead, he simply said, admitting your mistake and changing your ways, that's admirable. Let's all raise a glass to Chloe for finally ditching that jerk, someone said, whistling. Mason held up his glass and toasted to me, and just as we were clinking glasses, the private room door slammed open. Lily Green stormed in, face flushed with rage. Chloe, you can't just slander Ethan like that. Oh, so the side chick had arrived. The way she jumped in to defend Ethan, he must have done a good job brainwashing her. Flustered by Mason's sarcastic tone, Lily's face turned red, but she still stubbornly clung to her role as Ethan's protector. Regardless of what happened, she said, if there's no love, then there's no love. The engagement was called off already. Why are you still bad-mouthing him here? What's your goal? She stared directly at me the whole time, as if I were the one responsible for everything. How absurd. So I get together with friends to blow off some steam, and that's suddenly morally reprehensible? As if Ethan never talked trash about me behind my back? I wasn't someone who would just sit and take it. In my past life, I had loved Ethan too much, so much that I convinced myself he loved me the same. That blind belief had destroyed me. I didn't mean. Lily's voice cracked as tears welled up in her eyes, as though I were some villain and she an innocent little rabbit. Right then, Ethan barged in, rushing to shield her behind him. He glared at me with rage in his eyes. Chloe, if I see you bullying Lily again, don't blame me for what I'll do. That look, so full of disgust, made something inside me finally break. "Go ahead," I said, arms crossed. "Show me. I'd love to see what you'll do." There was no love left, only hatred, and a front row seat to his downfall. "Chloe, don't be so aggressive," Lily snapped. "How could someone like you, a woman who's been dumped, still have the nerve to show up and run your mouth? Aren't you afraid people will laugh at you?" They clearly thought such words would shame me into silence, but before I could respond, Mason spoke first. "And who exactly are you?" he said flatly. "You do realize it's the 21st century, right? If you're so obsessed with whatever era you think you're living in, feel free to go back there. Just don't come in here ranting like a fool." Between Mason and the rest of my childhood friends, Ethan was humiliated into leaving. "Happy now?" Mason asked, his voice dry but curious. "Of course," I replied. "A guy like him? He's not even qualified to shine my shoes." I knew Mason was testing me, trying to see if I'd really let go of Ethan for good. "To Chloe Morgan," Mason announced, raising his glass. "Welcome back to the land of common sense." Everyone clinked glasses in celebration. After that night, I never saw Ethan Lawson again. I was busy finalizing my applications to study abroad. Ethan and Lily filled their social feeds with sweet couple photos, but none of it had anything to do with me anymore. He posted everything in the alumni group chats, so even when I didn't want to see it, it was hard to avoid. Eventually, I just muted him completely. A few days before I left the country, Mrs. Lawson suddenly came to find me. "Chloe, in Auntie's heart, you've always been the best choice to be the Lawson family's daughter-in-law. Our business is thriving now. A woman like Lily isn't worthy of Ethan at all." She said it with that familiar, haughty arrogance. She used to look down on Lily, and now that the Lawson business was booming, she didn't just look down on Lily. She looked down on me too. Don't be fooled by the cautious way she was speaking to me now. In my previous life, after I married Ethan, Mrs. Lawson dropped the act immediately. All her flattery and humility had been just to get the Lawsons into the Morgan family's circle. Once the partnership was secured, she showed her true face. After our wedding, she encouraged Ethan to strip away my dignity. "Take down the Morgan family first," she told him. "Once that's done, Chloe will be easy to deal with." She was the one who pushed him to throw me to those desperate men and eventually to sell me to that black site. She wanted revenge for all the time she'd had to grovel before me. I still remember when I was being assaulted in that filthy place, she stood right outside the door, ignoring my screams for help. She said I was getting exactly what I deserved. So now, seeing her fake, self-serving smile, I gave her nothing. "Auntie, I'm a human being. I have pride too. Ethan called off the engagement in front of everyone, and now you're here. What do you want from me?" Anyone watching this might think the Lawsons can't let go. If you're so eager to climb the social ladder, then maybe you should have made Ethan act with more class. Don't you think this is just pathetic now? I made myself perfectly clear. No more pretending. Ignoring the ugly twist of her expression, I turned and walked away. Behind me, she clenched her fists and glared with hatred burning in her eyes. Soon after, the Fox family hosted their company's anniversary party. Since our families had been close for generations, of course we were invited. I said a casual goodbye to my friends. In just 2 more days, I'd be leaving the country. I arrived at the party in a golden evening gown. The moment I stepped in, eyes turned to me. Mason Fox came up right away. "Chloe, we've been waiting for you. Come on, we've got a table out in the garden. Just the heirs and heiresses hanging out, drinking." People were chatting and laughing, swaying lightly with the music. Some sat around the table sipping drinks. When I arrived, they raised their glasses in unison. "To Miss Morgan, cheers to finally seeing clearly and dumping that loser." There were no ulterior motives here, no backstabbing politics, just genuine celebration for me. Thank you all. It feels good to be free of him. I was completely at ease. Not far away, Ethan stood alone, watching all of us toast and laugh together, his fists clenched at his sides. Maybe he was mad because he heard someone call him a scumbag. But honestly, it wasn't my concern anymore. After what he did, calling off the engagement in public, he'd become a pariah among the elite. Everyone now kept their distance from him and treated the Lawsons without the deference they once had. Back when people thought the Lawsons would marry into the Morgans, they were polite. Now? No one felt the need to hold back. Every jab was fair game. I clinked glasses with everyone. "Oh, right," I said, raising my voice slightly. "Since we're all here at Mason's party, I wanted to share something. Just a heads up. In 2 days, I'll be heading overseas for grad school, but when I come back, I'll see you all on the business battlefield." We toasted again. The more I drank, the more invincible I felt, like I could wrestle a tiger off a mountain. I was laughing, flushed, and happy. Then I caught Mason's eyes from across the table. He didn't look as cheerful. He seemed down. Holding my glass, I made my way over and clinked it against his. "What's with that face? Don't tell me the alcohol your family paid for tastes bad?" We'd been childhood friends forever. Just friends. Aside from a few arguments, mostly because I used to be blindly in love with Ethan, Mason and I had always gotten along well. You're really leaving the country?" he asked. "Weren't you supposed to stay here for grad school?" "The world's too big to stay in one place. I want to go see it. When I come back, we'll be partners in the business world," I said, grinning as I sipped my wine. "Business partners," I repeated. "We'll make a great team." His eyes had lit up when I first spoke, but by the time I finished, his expression dimmed noticeably. "I thought you were going to say something like, 'When you get back, we'd get engaged or something,'" he said with a teasing smile, trying to make it sound light. Then he added quickly, "Kidding, just kidding, don't overthink it. Relax, you're still the same jokester as always," I said. We shared a glance and a knowing smile, the kind of unspoken understanding that only came with years of friendship. I sat beside Mason Fox as music played in the background. Neither of us said a word, but the silence felt just right. The party carried on. Mason and I were deep in conversation, laughing easily, when suddenly Lily Green came charging in. She grabbed the glass of wine I was halfway through and poured it out. "Lily, what the hell are you doing?" I snapped back instantly, my tone reverting to the assertive, no-nonsense daughter of the Morgan family. I never tolerated anyone who tried to make a scene at my expense. Ever since she got together with Ethan, I had already stepped back from everything. Now she had the nerve to cause a scene? "Chloe, you can't drink that," Lily said urgently. "Ethan's mother drugged your wine." Gone was the timid, pitiful version of Lily. Her eyes now shone with determination and concern. There was something different in the way she looked at me, something familiar. Concern, sincerity, desperation. She kept pouring, her voice low but serious. "I'm telling the truth, Chloe. Mrs. Lawson wants you and Ethan to spend the night together. Then she'll bring reporters to your room in the morning and pressure you into marrying him. She wants to trap you. I know you won't marry Ethan. You don't want this, and neither do I." How ironic. "So, Miss Green, are you so afraid you won't get into the Lawson family that you came running to stop me? Afraid you'll never become Mrs. Lawson, is that it?" "She's not the type who'd stoop that low," someone muttered beside me. "You can rest easy, Chloe. You'd never fall for a setup like that." Despite everyone's teasing and doubt, Lily didn't flinch. She just turned to me, looked me in the eye, and said seriously, "Chloe, you have to believe me. Mrs. Lawson is not who she pretends to be." I stared at her long and hard. In her eyes, I saw a certainty that didn't belong to someone living in the moment. It clicked instantly. Lily had been reborn too. "I understand," I said quietly. "Go, I won't fall into her trap." I told her to leave, because if she stayed, Mrs. Lawson would know she had betrayed her. And with that woman's viciousness, I didn't want to imagine what she'd do to Lily. Before Lily left, she turned back and reminded me firmly, "Don't stay in any of the rooms here tonight." As soon as she left, Mason looked at me with concern. "Chloe, you only had half that drink. Are you feeling okay?" I was silent for a moment, then said honestly, "Something's wrong." Heat was blooming in my chest like wildfire, spreading fast. My body felt like it was burning from the inside out. The slightest glance at any man made me want to throw myself at him. I clenched my fists, trying desperately to stay in control. I didn't want to lose it, not in front of Mason. "This is too much," I gasped. "Get me to a hospital, now." Mason didn't hesitate. He wrapped an arm around me, and we exited through the back door. We were at a private mountain resort. The nearest hospital was in the city. There was no choice but for Mason to drive. I was already drenched in sweat when we got in the car. My skin was burning. I felt like I was going to combust. "Mason, How long until we get there? I feel like I'm melting. I bit my lip hard, fighting the rising urge to throw myself on him. Hang in there, Chloe. We've only been driving for 5 minutes. I've already found the nearest hospital, Mason said urgently. He could see the sweat glistening on my forehead. He knew I wasn't okay. He floored the gas. There weren't many cars in this remote area. He sped up, cutting corners with precision. I kept asking how much longer. Less than 15 minutes had passed, but my body couldn't take it anymore. My cheeks were flushed, my breathing ragged. The heat was driving me mad. I clawed at my clothes, fidgeting uncontrollably. It was unbearable. Mason, is there a hotel nearby? I can't take this anymore. I was shaking. I don't care who, I'll pay him later. Just pull over. Hearing that, Mason whipped the car into a hard 360-degree turn. Hold on 2 more minutes, he said. My villa is nearby. And true to his word, we arrived at Mason's private villa in under 2 minutes. He rushed to open the car door. You don't need some random guy, I'm right here. Will I do? I couldn't hold it back anymore. I lunged toward him. Because I knew Mason was proud, restrained, and decent. At worst, I could make it up to him later. And when I finally woke up again, it was already the afternoon of the next day. I quickly got myself together and asked Mason to drive me home. I needed to pack and prepare for my trip abroad. On the day I left the country, it was Mason who drove me to the airport. Normally so laid back and confident, he suddenly became awkward and hesitant. Chloe, he said as we sat in the VIP lounge, can you be my girlfriend? I paused, coffee in hand, then looked up at him. Is this just because we slept together once? No, he replied seriously. I've liked you for a long time. I appreciated his honesty, but I stood by my decision. Mason, thank you for helping me that night. If it weren't for you, I might not have made it to the hospital. I could barely breathe. But I'm just not in the mood for a relationship right now. I meant it sincerely. I wasn't trying to hurt him. I just didn't feel anything romantic toward anyone at the moment. Mason scratched his head and gave me a sheepish smile. It's okay, Chloe. Being friends is great too. I'm not going to guilt trip you just because something happened between us. Seeing I wasn't interested in love, he quickly changed the subject and chatted with me about other things. Just then, I heard someone calling my name from the door. Chloe. It was Lily Green, standing outside the VIP lounge. She had bought a regular ticket and wasn't allowed to enter, so she was shouting from the hallway. I saw the anxious look on her face. She was the one who'd warned me about the drugged drink that night. I walked over and got her permission to come inside. Thank you, Chloe, she said, eyes already red. The next second, she burst into tears. What's wrong? I asked politely. We weren't close, so I kept my tone neutral. Chloe, please help me, she sobbed. Ethan, he's disgusting. His business partners are pulling away from him, and now he wants to hand me over to them to secure a deal. Lily had seen Ethan's true nature clearly after her own rebirth. Last night, she had overheard a conversation between Mrs. Lawson and Ethan. The Lawson family's business was faltering, and one of their potential partners had taken a liking to Lily. So Mrs. Lawson and Ethan decided to send Lily to that man's bed to win the deal. Lily had bought a plane ticket to escape the night before. She knew that as long as she stayed in the country, the Lawsons would find her eventually. She had hoped to leave with Mason's flight. Since he was flying privately, there was still a chance she could go with him. You're trying to leave with me? I asked. I had already guessed it. Yes, she said urgently. The Lawsons know I ran. They're at the airport looking for me now. Please, Chloe, I don't want to be treated like some object, some gift they're throwing onto a man's bed. Her voice trembled with fear as she looked at me, pleading. I pulled her aside and made her sit down. Now you understand who Ethan really is, don't you? He'll marry someone for profit and sell off the woman he loves for profit too. I asked Mason to bring her a coffee to calm her down. You're planning to stay abroad for a long time, right? I asked Lily. What kind of visa do you have? I've already got everything sorted. I can stay long term. She looked nervous as she answered, but I could tell she was deliberately keeping things vague about Ethan's whereabouts. What country are you going to? Maybe we're headed in the same direction. I'm going to France, she said. I'm studying fashion design. In her mind, it didn't matter where I was going. She just needed to get on the same plane. I'm headed to the UK, I replied. But I was thinking about stopping in France for a few days first. Let's go together. As we were talking, Mason returned and said quietly, "You two need to hide in the restroom. The Lawsons are heading this way looking for someone." Mason had been keeping watch for us the whole time. Lily and I grabbed her luggage and slipped into the lounge restroom. Ethan arrived shortly after with several Lawson family members. They didn't find Lily. It wasn't until we were safely on the plane that I finally exhaled in relief. On the flight, Lily told me more about her past life. After I married Ethan in our previous life, Lily had gone to France to study fashion design. Once I had been discarded and sold into that hellish place, and everything had settled down, Ethan brought Lily back to his side. But her peaceful life didn't last long. Ethan, seeking new markets and contacts, had gotten involved with organized crime. One of his shady partners took an interest in Lily, and just like that, Ethan handed her over, without hesitation, straight into that man's bed. In the end, Lily died at the hands of those monsters from the gang. After hearing about everything she'd gone through in her past life, I let out a heavy sigh. Men who climb the ladder through women, those so-called Phoenix men, are almost never loyal. I swore to myself I'd keep my eyes wide open in the future. We stayed in Paris for a few days. Lily went to the fashion design studio she had already contacted while I wandered around the city, just taking in the sights. Mason stuck to me like a shadow. Wherever I went, he followed. Every time I asked him why he wasn't heading back yet, he simply said, "I'll go once I'm sure you're safe in the UK." With the glow of sunset all around us, we walked down the streets of Paris, the breeze brushing our faces, fleeting like passing travelers. Once we arrived in the UK and finished registering for school and settling into the apartment I'd bought near campus, Mason helped me get familiar with the area. He stayed with me for an entire month before flying home. Nothing romantic happened between us during that time. On the day he left, I went to the airport to see him off. Just before he entered the terminal, I called out to him, "Mason, before your flight, I have something to show you." I handed him a piece of paper. "I'm pregnant." He stared at the test result, tears of joy welling up in his eyes. "Chloe, let's get married," he said seriously. I looked back at him calmly. "I'm keeping the baby, but I'm not going to use this child to tie you down. You can be his father, or not. That's your choice." "Chloe, I get what you're saying," Mason replied. "You've always been a free spirit. That's okay. I'll come visit you often in the UK. Whatever you need, just tell me." When I told him I wouldn't be getting an abortion, his whole face lit up. He genuinely looked forward to the baby's arrival. "I've got a housekeeper to help me," I said. "All I need to do is go to and from school each day. Once I'm far enough along, I'll take a short break from classes and return after the baby's born." I meant what I said. Never once had I thought of using the baby to trap Mason. "You don't have to hold yourself back for me," I added. "Live your life, fall in love if you want to." "Chloe, do you really think I've been single all these years for no reason?" he asked quietly, clearly hurt. "All right, go on," I said, waving at him as the boarding announcement echoed in the terminal. I watched until his figure disappeared from sight. At graduation, Mason came to the ceremony holding our child in his arms. Watching the two of them sitting below the stage, clapping for me, filled my heart with warmth and joy. Afterward, we strolled together along the riverbank. Even though Mason and I hadn't married, we had always been there for our son. Neither of our families made a fuss about it either. Then, on our son's birthday, Mason proposed. Looking at the ring our son handed me, I had no reason to refuse anymore. I didn't know what the future would bring, but in that moment, we were happy. I heard about Ethan again at a banquet. He had been involved in the black market for years now, often humiliated by older rich women who treated him like their plaything. I heard he once stole a necklace from one of them and ended up being sold to Myanmar. As for Mrs. Lawson, she wasn't doing much better. After the scandal involving her schemes, Mr. Lawson divorced her. She refused to leave their house, but he ignored her entirely, bringing 3 or 4 younger women to live with him instead, along with his illegitimate son. One day, Mrs. Lawson got into a fight with the girls Mr. Lawson had brought home. She ended up injuring his favorite one. That was the last straw. He kicked her out of the house. Bookmark.